faster and more intense. That was his main direction. He just wanted us to speed through it.
George is notorious for saying, after a take, do it again, faster, more intensity. He certainly said to me, was, terrific, Tony, can you do it again faster? But that's it, I didn't get more intensity. I didn't think 3PO with more intensity would be bearable, do you?
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Faster and More Intense. I'm your host, Shiloh Camrath, and joining me today is not George Costel. George is away again this week. However, we do have Mr. Jeffrey Cagle. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, how we doing?
Oh, pretty good. So, it's been a while since you've been with us. I think last time was middle of Season 2 for Rebels, I think?
Yeah, it was a while ago, about, 2 months ago, geez. I feel like it was yesterday.
Yeah. Well, today we're going to be talking about some of the news that came out this week, and also the C-3PO comic. I believe it's just a one-shot, right? I don't think it's as part of a series.
Yeah, I think this is the only one. Even though they put 001 at the top, I don't know why they did that, unless they're toying with us. So. Yeah,
well, the ending was pretty... I can't see them making an entire series out of this, but...
No, neither can I.
Yeah.
So.
Well, before we hop right into that, let's go over some news. So, Jeff, do you have some news for us this week?
I do indeed, Shiloh. The first little nugget that I just saw, I think they just announced it today, is that Sir Warwick Davis will be hosting a Star Wars Celebration in Europe. The celebration is going to be from July 15th through 17th. I will not be there. Since I do not have the money to go to Europe.
Yep,
but
same here.
For those, so for those people who are going, that'll be exciting. I know Warwick Davis he's a pretty big deal over there in England, particularly with the Star Wars and the sci-fi crowd. So.
Yeah, well, you said Sir Warwick Davis. Has he been knighted? Is he a
legitimate
sir?
I have no idea.
Oh.
I have no idea. I'm assuming probably not, but he deserves to be, even if he isn't a knight.
Yeah,
so.
I think James Arnold Taylor hosted the last one, right? The last celebration.
Yeah, I think the last European one, right? Or was it the last one last year?
Last one last year, I think.
I'm gonna say
sure.
Yes. I don't remember. Yeah,
I don't remember either.
It was almost exactly a year ago now. So
yeah, seems like so long though.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Moving along then. The Alamo Drafthouse Cinema. I have no idea where they're located. I'm assuming somewhere in Texas. Is sponsoring a traveling roadshow with screenings of the original trilogy on the big screen this summer. I guess they're going to be going to 20 different cities. And people, if they're interested in seeing the original trilogy on the big screen again, can look up the Alamo Drafthouse Cinema and see if they are in or near one of those cities where they will be showing the original trilogy. So
this is something that, I don't know if I understand it that much. I mean, it's been out so long, and I guess some people would like to go back and see it in the theater, but this is something that I really have no interest in as far as...
Yeah, that's kind of how I am too. I mean, if it was right next door, 5 minutes down the road, I would probably do it. But otherwise, even when they were released a couple years ago in 3D, I did not go and see them. So
yeah, me neither.
It's just I will say I did see
or just the prequels in 3D.
I think they just did the prequels, but correct me if I'm wrong, but they released the original trilogy again on the big screen a couple years ago, just in I think it was a limited run. So, I don't know. I need to look into that more, but anyway. But like I said, if people are interested, they can go and do that. And if they're not, so be it. Again, moving right along, I don't know if you saw this, Shiloh, but there's an article in Entertainment Weekly from yesterday, actually. It was posted yesterday on the April 15th. And the title of the article is Who Killed Constable Zuvio? And for those people who aren't aware, Zuvio is the Kyuzo male who was supposed to be in The Force Awakens, presumably in The Force Awakens. He had lots of toys, and then he was nowhere to be found when The Force Awakens was released.
He even got his own story, I think, too. The Alien short stories that came out.
Yeah, High Noon on Jakku is his short story. So, and I actually just reread that the other day. It's a fun little story, and people should definitely check that out. But I will say, in the article, they interviewed Pablo Hidalgo from the Star Wars Story Group, and he actually found one scene in The Force Awakens where Constable Zuvio is in the background. So he is in the film, apparently. Although not to the degree that we all were hoping.
Yeah. I don't know if this is true or not. I have heard some rumors that there were plans for him to be in a lot more scenes. Like, he had, 2 or 3 scenes in the movie, but I'm not sure if that's true or not.
Well, from this article, J.J. Abrams was asked about Zuvio, and he had no idea who he was being asked about at first. And come to find out, he actually said that Zuvio had no speaking lines in the film. He was just, a character off to the side. So it's actually a really interesting article if people are interested in finding out about Constable Zuvio and why he became a toy and then subsequently was not prominent in the film.
Yeah, I think we should blame the intern at Lucasfilm or Disney who sent the wrong memo to Hasbro. They intended to send a different memo, but this one got sent. It was just make everything about Constable Zuvio you can.
Well, there is no shortage now of Black Series Zuvios at the store, so when they go on super clearance, because nobody's buying them, I will be sure to pick up mine.
Yep.
And then lastly, speaking of The Force Awakens, and this is probably the big nugget that came out just recently, is J.J. Abrams was asked at a recent event if he could give any clue or indication about whose Rey's parents are. And he basically came out and said that Rey's parents are not, I repeat, not in Episode 7. So what do you make of that?
That's a glimmer of hope, actually.
Is it?
I have been saying for months how I sincerely hope that Rey is not a Skywalker. We've already got a Skywalker. We've got Ben Skywalker. We can follow his story, but I was really hoping that Rey was not a Skywalker. I would actually be cool if she was even a Kenobi. Some people have been talking about that. I think that would be kind of cool. Right. But I really hope that she's not a Skywalker. So this, for me, is a glimmer of hope. Of course, J.J. Abrams could just legitimately be lying, to everyone.
Oh, absolutely.
So that is also a total possibility here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I like the idea that the mystery remains, that he was able to provide a nugget of information for us to go off of that keeps the speculation really up and alive. Because I think if nothing else, we at the end of the day are not going to know anything about Rey until they absolutely want to reveal it, whether that's in Episode 8 or Episode 9. We will definitely get nuggets about Rey in Episode 8, but I cannot imagine them letting the cat out of the bag on this one at all.
So you don't think we're going to find out who her parents are in Episode 8?
I really don't. I think, maybe we'll find out who one of them is. Maybe. I don't know. But I think if nothing else, this at least forces people to think about Rey in sort of a different way. I didn't mean to rhyme right there. Rey and Way. Because, almost immediately, and I have to admit too, I felt like, oh, she's probably related to Luke. But this sort of forces us, since Luke is in the end of Episode 7, to say, well, hold on a second. Is he referring to parents in the plurality? Both of the parents aren't there? Or is he legitimately, pushing it out and saying that person is just not in the movie. Therefore, it is not Luke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, there's also been some speculation after seeing the Rogue One trailer that the lady in there could possibly be Rey's mom, which I wouldn't mind too much. I think that would also be interesting, but I just really don't want her to be a Skywalker. I mean, because among other things, that makes Luke deadbeat dad of the Galaxy Award. You know,
Right.
He drops off his daughter to go into slavery on a planet, on a desert planet, and then lives by himself forever. You know, for 30 years.
Yeah. It raises some really interesting speculative questions about, Luke giving up, I guess, after Kylo Ben does his thing and kills the Jedi. Why it is that Luke would do that with his offspring. But on the flip side of that, and just going back to something you said a second ago, I personally, whereas you don't want her to be a Skywalker, I really do not want her to be a Kenobi. I think that would actually be worse at the end of the day than her being a Skywalker.
Really? How come?
Well, to me, Obi-Wan Kenobi does not sort of lend himself, in my mind, to being a parent while on Tatooine. We get the storyline in the Clone Wars where he has his relationship with Duchess Satine of Mandalore, and you really get the feeling that they had something real together. But I just can't, beyond that, I cannot see him sort of sacrificing his mission on Tatooine, protecting Luke, and even on the flip side, communing with Qui-Gon and learning how to become one with the Force when he dies. Sort of sacrificing all of that for a relationship, and then beyond that, the sort of the deadbeat dad stuff comes into it again. Like,
Yeah.
He goes off to save the galaxy. Well, where is his family? Where, was it a one night stand? Can we imagine Kenobi having a one night stand and accidentally knocking somebody up? I'm not sure I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that is a good point because Kenobi, I guess, has always been the model Jedi. I think even more than Yoda. Kenobi has been the model of the perfect Jedi, and Jedi are not supposed to form attachments. So that is a good point. I think you just ruined Rey as a Kenobi for me. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe she's like a distant relative. Maybe he had a sister he never knew about.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, but I don't know. I hope we don't get a Luke, I am your father moment in Episode 8. That's very similar to Rey, I am your mother moment, or something like that.
Which it would probably go down like that,
I hope
right?
Episode 8 takes a
Vader
little more
and
divergent path from, Episode 5.
No, I'm with you, because, I think that we can all agree that Episode 7 had a lot of similarities, be they stylistic or even narrative, with A New Hope. So I really think that was intentional on the part of JJ to sort of get the universe back into gear, get the film, universe going again. But I don't see Episode 8 being a spitting image of The Empire Strikes Back at this point. At least I hope it isn't.
Yeah. Yeah, the Episode 7, it was meant to be nostalgic. It was meant to bring back some of that feel. It did that. In some instances, it may have gotten a little too similar, but I think that has served its purpose, and now with Episode 8, they can probably go in a different direction, in any direction they want, really.
Right. But if they want to throw a Wampa into Episode 8, I won't complain about that. That would be fun.
That would be pretty cool. Maybe even like a sentient Wampa that's like in the cantina and like playing cards or something in the back room.
Yeah. The good Wampa. They could have that as a standalone film.
Oh, or even a comic. Carl the Good Wampa.
Yeah. Carl the Good Wampa. That would be pretty great.
Well, speaking of standalone comic, see that wonderful transition I just did?
That was good.
Yeah.
That was impressive.
Yeah.
I like that.
C-3PO one-shot came out this week. So let's talk about this now. Jeff, what did you think of this comic overall? Just your general impressions of it.
Well, we waited quite a while for this comic to come out. It had, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was supposed to come out before The Force Awakens came out in December.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was,
yeah, I did not know that.
It was slated to come out, and they just kept pushing it back for whatever reason, but that's okay. We finally got it. I thought that this was a nice comic. I didn't think that this was necessarily the most revolutionary comic I've ever read or the best Star Wars comic I've ever read. But given all of the things that we've been getting from the new Poe Dameron series to the Darth Vader comics to all this stuff that's been going on with Ahsoka and Rebels and now with Rogue One, it was kind of nice to read just this standalone comic, this one shot where all the characters are just droids, and they're sort of all working together to overcome crashing on a planet, and we don't even know what planet it is. So I thought it was a nice comic. But again, I wasn't really overwhelmed by it in any like revolutionary way. I did not weep. I know some other people I talked to wept at the end.
Wow.
Given everything that happens, and that's fine. But yeah, I think nice is the way that I would sum it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think it was an okay comic. It's a couple one kind of major issue that I had about it, which we can talk about in a second. But it was a fun little comic. It did what it was supposed to do. It was overall pretty good. What I found kind of funny though is that the main premise of the story, how C-3PO got his red arm, I think is probably the one mystery of The Force Awakens that people probably care the least about. It's like,
yes.
I did not watch The
Absolutely.
Force Awakens, see his red arm, and be like, oh, wow, I have to know this. Like, this is make or break right now. This is number one thing that I need to know about The Force Awakens. Why does he have a red arm? I mean, I watched the movie, he's like, okay, he's got a red arm, I could care less.
And then at the end of the movie, the red arm is gone.
Yeah.
It's completely gone. He's waving, and all right, fantastic. I'm presuming that Chewie, in his grief, put him back together correctly. So, because that's apparently what Chewie likes to do.
Yep.
But yeah, I would agree with you. I felt like the way he gets the red arm, which for those of you who are listening and you don't know what the premise of this comic is, that is essentially what it is. It's how did C-3PO get the red arm. I thought that it was pretty straightforward. It wasn't very revolutionary. The golden arm gets pulled off. He ends up getting the red arm of, not to spoil it, spoiler alerts.
Oh, you can go ahead and spoil it, because...
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
He gets the red arm of this prisoner, this other droid named Omri, who he has been bantering with, C-3PO has been bantering with, and at the end, Omri sacrifices himself, herself, however you want to think about it, for C-3PO, and the red arm endures when the sacrifice happens, and C-3PO will take the red arm for his own at that point.
Mm-hmm. So... Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, okay, so what I wanted to talk about is the one major issue that I had with this issue is droids being able, that level of thinking for themselves and autonomy that they have, which I don't know how prevalent it was in the EU, but I know in the new canon they're kind of pushing this lately. So I immediately think to the Rebels episode. I believe it was. Is it not Mystery of Chopper Base? The one right before it.
The one right before it.
Yeah.
I am completely blanking on the name as well.
Yeah. Oh, either way, Chopper flips a Imperial droid. Okay.
Right.
So, and then here, C-3PO flips an Imperial, a First Order droid, and it just something about it doesn't strike me as working, because droids, I mean, they obviously have to have some autonomous function, but they are in the end programmed, and even they talk about their programming in this issue, and I find it hard to believe that 20 seconds of conversation, well, maybe a day of conversation, is enough to flip, programming and make the droid completely become a traitor to your side. Like, if you're the Empire of the First Order, what good is having a droid around that your enemy can switch to their side just by talking to them.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on that. It was an issue with this comic, the fact that through these conversations, it's very apparent that this Omri, this prisoner, is not on C-3PO's side, or the other droids that are with C-3PO, the other resistance droids. But through the process of events and sort of the process of conversation with 3PO, Omri, at the end, chooses to help C-3PO. He's not... I guess he's not... I can't remember exactly how he phrases it. He does not... do it out of any sense of betrayal against the First Order, but he does it out of friendship for 3PO. Which, and like you just said, do you really want a droid working for your side that is going to, at the end of the day, decide to give away classified information
yeah.
because it feels friendly with another droid?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can understand a human doing that. That's the way our emotions are built. That's the way we work. And that's the reason why people choose the causes that they have. But a droid, it's not meant to be that. There's a reason why you use droids, and that's to perform some task that a human doesn't want to do or can't do. And that's the way and that's why they have programming, is to where you can make them be exactly what you need them to be. And
right.
Yeah, it's just kind of suspending my disbelief a little at the amount of humanity that the droids in the new canon are having.
Well, and I think that this particular comic, this C-3PO comic, I think its intention, sort of the underlying philosophical conversation, I suppose you could say, behind it is this issue of the humanity of the droids in Star Wars. And I think that gets extended, that same conversation gets extended to Star Wars Rebels with Chopper, and what Chopper is doing in the series, and how he's treated at times in the series. So I can understand why they're bringing this conversation into it. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of it stems from, if you go back to the prequels and you go back to Obi-Wan's statement, where he sort of criticizes droids. If droids could think, none of us would be here. Type of situation. So I appreciate on some level that Star Wars, if nothing else, as a part of sci-fi, is having or bringing up these types of philosophical questions. But that being said, I think that other areas in sci-fi and fantasy do it a little bit better. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about this, and I said, if I was to teach a class on like technology and consciousness and AI and things like that, I don't know if I would use Star Wars. I would probably use the movie AI from Steven Spielberg, or even the movie I, Robot, to bring up these issues of consciousness and sentience and droids and robots and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think that as far as droids, I like the way that, say, the prequels and the Clone Wars portrayed droids. More as, for the most part, droids in there were the antagonists. They were the faceless enemies. But I don't think you ever really had a droid betray their side in that. In either the prequels or the Clone Wars. They were, they may, at some points... They may attempted to, ingratiate themselves in the side, but they always stayed true to their programming, and
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the only time you might ever get close to that in the Clone Wars is when maybe tactical droids, separatist tactical droids, sort of make a decision that puts their human and or alien masters where they basically throw them under the bus. And the one that I'm thinking of is when the tactical droid in the first season of the Clone Wars throws Wat Tambor under the bus, and leaves him on Ryloth. Mm-hmm. But then we could also just chalk that up to that was its programming from Dooku.
Yeah.
Dooku told it to leave.
Or
so I don't know.
Or its programming was, for the greater good of the Separatist cause. Whereas I don't think you can chalk that up to in the case of this First Order droid that doing this would be for the greater good of the First Order to let C-3PO have the information about Akbar.
Right. And I want to come back to the Akbar thing in a second, but I wanted to ask you what you thought of this, and I guess if we were to talk about sort of the philosophical thing at the center of the droids here is they're talking about memory wipe.
Yeah.
We know that C-3PO has had his memory wiped before, and we know that from this comic that Omri, this First Order droid, has had its memory wiped. And it basically says, I very well could have been a Resistance droid before my memory was wiped. And it asks C-3PO what it remembers from his past. And he says, just a moment, just places. And I'm quoting here. He remembers rocks, a factory of droids, an arena in the middle of a battle, my body, not my own, a green world with hills, underwater cities, a single city spread far as my optical sensors could see, a temple on fire, smoky mountains of magma, and fire suffering. So we know what he's referring to, right?
Yeah. Which, that also gets me because a droid's memory is, as far as we know in the Star Wars world, just ones and zeros, right? I mean, and if you wipe that, you wipe it. There is no backup. There's no conscious. I mean, I doubt the Bail Organa's guys on the Tantive 4 would do that bad of a job of wiping his memory.
Right.
Oops, we forgot to empty the wastebasket when we, wiped his memory.
Right. Yeah. They deleted the files, but they didn't empty the waste.
Yeah, exactly.
But everything's in the cloud, apparently.
Yeah.
They can still download it from the cloud.
Yeah. So I'm just.
But I do. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm really surprised that they're going here with this. I mean, for a story purpose, if you were to just take this as a story, that works really well. It's a nice moment. We get to, it's just a great little scene. But from a broader universe perspective and, looking at how does this actually work, why does this actually make sense, I think it's kind of hard to defend in that position.
No, I agree with you. I think that on the one hand, they're trying to drum up this conversation about, what does memory look like for a droid who's had his or her memory wiped? And even the fact that I'm saying his or her is weird, too. I mean, we could probably have a conversation at length about, masculine and feminine gender identity in droids. But yeah, I can appreciate that they're doing it. And I think that one of the reasons they're probably doing it in this way in the 3PO comic is, and I don't know if you heard this, but or read anything about this, but there was a conversation or a question that J.J. Abrams was asked a while back about why is it that R2 is suddenly able to remember?
Yeah, I remember
how
this.
to find Luke.
Yeah.
And he said something to the effect of he sort of imagines, I'm paraphrasing here, somebody could probably point out my flaws in this, but he basically says that when BB-8 rolls up to R2 and bangs into him, and he basically says that BB-8 says something to him like, I've got the map, we can find Luke now. Something to that effect, and that jars R2's memory. Mm-hmm. Is that possible? I think it could be. I mean, I don't know enough about computer systems or sci-fi fantasy robots to understand how their memory works. But at the same time, I'm with you. I'm with you with what you're saying about, isn't it okay to just have, when you say that a droid's memory is wiped, can't their memory just be wiped?
Yeah. And, I mean, I had heard... I think I had actually heard something different than you. I had heard that R2 was, over the years, what he was doing was he had gone all these years without his memory wiped, and now he was basically defragging his systems for all these years.
Okay. Okay.
Now that's what I had heard. I don't know if that was official or not, but that's at least what I've heard as far as what he was doing, which begs the question: why does it take that long to do that? But whatever. But yeah, I really don't. I feel like they're kind of playing a little loose with how droids work in Star Wars, and it would be nice to get some kind of definitive answer as to what makes this, what makes this possible. How exactly do droids work? But I'm not sure if we're going to be getting that at any time soon.
Well, and something that's interesting about that is in the comic, all of these other droids that we haven't even talked about, they sort of follow their programming to a T.
Yeah.
To the point where they get destroyed because they follow their programming. And really at the end of the day, all the droids, including Omri, the First Order droid, sacrifice themselves for 3PO. And that's pretty cool. But at the end of the day, Omri, it seems like, is the only one that, I don't know if I can say it like this, consciously does so.
Yeah.
Whereas the other ones, I would presume, are not doing it because they have any sense of friendship with 3PO. They just are doing it because that's their job.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a really strange... I mean, why that is really strange. And one of the things I can think of is there was, back during when the Clone Wars was running, I believe Dave Filoni had talked about this, about how the longer the clones served in the field, and the more, and when they had masters like Anakin, who was more, more free thinking, listens to his men, all that kind of stuff, they slowly developed, because of their experiences, more independent personalities. Because it's not just programming, it's not just instincts, which make someone who they are. A good portion of it is your experiences and how they shape you. So I could think that possibly, C-3PO has obviously been around a long time, and Omri has obviously been around a long time. So there's a possibility they both, because of their longevity and the experiences they've had, have developed the ability to think a little more freely. And another thing I can also think of, also from the Clone Wars, it was during the Goldie episodes where R2 was captured in the first season. And they talked about how R2 has never had his memory wiped.
Right.
And because of that, they talked about how he's developed, some peculiar personality that's different.
Right, yeah.
And so I think that there's a possibility that it's just that C-3PO and Omri have been around a lot longer and had a lot more experiences, which once again begs the question, how does a droid work in Star Wars? I mean, is it just the case of they're around for a long time and then they slowly develop, a more free thinking?
Yeah. I think that could be. I think that would probably be a reasonable way of thinking about it. Now, and I guess the question from there
So, you
would
mentioned
be,
the other droids, so why don't we talk about them for a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
I believe we had a medical... Go ahead.
Oh, no. What, the medical droid, you were saying.
Yeah.
2 Med 2.
2 Med 2. We had a construction droid, which I believe is the first we've seen. And we had one of the droids from The Force Awakens that I remember, the big blue guy, who apparently is some kind of assault droid.
Yes, he is. I wrote down the name here. PZ-99. He is a military-grade Class 4, and he was at the Battle of Jakku.
Yay! Well, I like the name 99. I don't know if that was intentional to clone number 99 or not, but...
Let's just say it was.
Let's just say it was. Have a little feel-good moment here. Yeah.
Absolutely. So PZ-99, 2 Med 2. The construction droid is CO-34, and a little security droid named VL-44.
Yeah, and there wasn't, like you were saying, they pretty much stuck to their programming. There wasn't anything individual about them. And, they all sacrificed themselves in the end in their own way. Like you said, they didn't sacrifice themselves for friendship. They sacrificed themselves for programming. The construction droid's instincts or programming was to build the bridge and make sure the bridge, stayed up. good engineering.
Yeah.
Security droid, make sure and protect non-combatants. So it was interesting why they would give some droids a personality and some not.
Right, absolutely. And I think one of the best examples in the comic of a droid following its programming but having some, you can see this as personality, but you can also see it as programming, is 2Med 2. When Omri is talking about finding a way to escape, 2Med 2 says we would find some way to incapacitate you at least.
Yeah.
And then later he goes on to say that saving lives, Omri, is my primary function. One side or another has no meaning to me.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, 2Med 2 is going to save Resistance fighters or First Order fighters if the situation comes down to it.
Yeah.
He's not really choosing. It is not really choosing to save lives. It just is programmed to save lives.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about droids a lot. Why don't we move on to sentient beings or organic beings?
Indeed.
Not very many in this issue. Like, once they arrive on the planet, they find out all other all other organic life on the planet has been killed, both the First Order and the Resistance guys, which is an interesting premise for the story to begin with. I like that way of introducing, this episode about the droids. It's like, oh, by the way, all their masters have been killed.
Yeah, poor Captain Hoth at the beginning. He's nowhere to be found because he is dead.
Yep. But what you mentioned Akbar. What do you think about him being kind of the MacGuffin of the story?
Oh my gosh! So I hope that they're gonna be giving us a story about how Admiral Akbar was captured by the First Order, and how Poe Dameron in Black Squadron or whoever had to go and save him. I mean, that is essentially one of the underlying premises of the story, is that they need to get this information about where Akbar is being held out of Omri. And he does. He ends up giving it to him at the end. Omri gives it to 3PO. But that's all about Akbar. I want to know more about Akbar, man.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, when I first saw The Force Awakens, I did not know that was Akbar. I thought that was just another random Mon Calamari.
Oh, wow. Oh, man.
Yeah. But the one thing, let's see, I believe it was Aftermath, that we got one little bit from Akbar, or two little bits, two little monologues.
Yeah, he shows up a couple times.
The one good thing about Aftermath. Okay, I'm not going to go on that rant, but I really enjoyed those parts with Akbar. I'd never seen him as more of a character than he was. I always thought he was just, it's a trap, and that's Akbar. But I mean, his little monologues there were actually quite interesting. So again, I would also like to see that story, and I think they have a excellent opportunity to show that story in the ongoing Poe Dameron comic.
Yeah, I guess a lot of it depends on how they are going to be proceeding. Like, how are they proceeding in giving us pre-Force Awakens storylines? And obviously, if people are reading the Poe Dameron, they are clearly setting up Poe going after and hunting down Lor San Tekka to, get the events of the Force Awakens going. But you're right. I think that there's a lot of room in space for them to incorporate these other little side stories, and I hope that they will do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe in this new Bloodline novel that's coming out soon from Claudia Gray, where we will be finding out about Leia running for first senator, I would presume Akbar would show up in it at some point, even if just briefly, as sort of voicing his support for Leia or something to that effect. I don't know. But I would like to see him there. I really want more of Akbar.
Yeah. Yep, same here. And also, I guess in the new Aftermath novel, we could probably be seeing him as well. That would be not exactly the time we're looking at, but still, I'm sure we would get some from him in that book.
Yeah, I think that going forward, I can't imagine Chuck Wendig in Aftermath not giving us more of Akbar, just in the sense that, like, he is the military commander of the rebellion turned New Republic. Like, he needs to be the one sort of at the forefront of pressing the attack against the disintegrating empire.
Yeah.
And I want to see that. And I think that on a personal level, right now where I'm at with sort of all the post-Endor, pre-Force Awakens information that's floating is I really want more of sort of the military maneuvers and whatnot. The kind of stories that we got in the Thrawn trilogy, or with Akbar in the Jedi Academy trilogy,
even
when those novels came out.
Yeah, even Battlefront Twilight Company was pretty good on that. It was a different time period.
Right, absolutely.
Still, we got kind of a military campaign. Yeah,
and I guess I'm having a hard time in this post-Endor, and maybe it's just because I grew up on the EU. In the EU, it took years for the Empire to fall apart.
Yeah,
and they didn't. They didn't at the end of the day. They ended up signing a peace, and they controlled part of the galaxy, and that was that. It was not a year after.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I mean, I never read the old EU, but same here. I mean, that was a huge organization, and we learned that the governors, the regional governors, even in Episode 4, with one of the lines of New Hope was the regional governors now have more direct control over their territories. And then in Lords of the Sith, we hear about that one colonel or major or whatever. He had replaced the planetary garrison with people not loyal to the Empire, people loyal to him.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And all you have to do is one of the things I would love to compare the Empire to is the Empire of Alexander the Great. As soon when he died, his empire didn't just be conquered by someone else. I mean, it split into 5 or 6 kingdoms ruled by his previous generals, which is exactly how I would imagine the Empire. I would imagine the governor of this system would, some systems obviously would fall to the Republic, but I mean, I'm really surprised that it would fall that quickly.
Yeah, and I think and going back to the 3PO, I think that the thing that I was sort of hoping for, and I guess I'm not surprised now after reading it, is there is a lack of information in this post-Endor, pre-Force Awakens era, and I just want more of that information presented. And I know that takes a while to write the stories and to drum everything up and get everything fleshed out. And I don't mean to say that all 30 years of that needs to be out right now. But I was hoping for a little bit more in this. I was hoping, if they were going to be talking about Akbar like they are, that we would be getting at least a little bit more about him. That the conversation would be a little bit more about the events that are going on between the Resistance and the First Order, and less about whether a Resistance droid and a First Order droid can be quasi-friends.
Because, at this point, I think really the only thing we have to go off of is that after the Empire fell, there was a couple battles over Naboo, and there was one big battle over Jakku, Empire gone, yay.
Yeah. And, right there, and I don't know if you've been playing this. I've been playing the Uprising game.
No, I have not been playing it.
Uprising, it takes place in the Anawit sector, and while I have some gripes with the pacing of the game, it's an otherwise interesting premise that the governor of the Anawit sector, the Imperial governor, almost in the immediate aftermath of Endor, just like the day after, basically shut down the whole system, like locked it down, blockaded it so nobody can get in, nobody can get out, and presumably, although I haven't, and I don't even know if they have the end of the story figured out yet. There's a lot of really interesting stuff there about sort of, how do you live under the yoke of Imperial domination, as you're trying to participate in the uprising against the Empire and all this. And I even though, like I said, the pacing of the game at times is frustrating because you have to level up and all this to get to the next story level. It's an interesting story. It's an interesting story that you are playing within this cloistered section of the galaxy that, our main heroes and protagonists don't know what's going on there.
Yeah.
And that to me is more this idea that a sector of the galaxy was completely closed off by a governor is much more Star Warsy to me than necessarily, like you were just saying, you know, a handful of battles that we've been given, and that's sort of that.
Yeah, and I mean, not just Star Warsy, but that's very historically accurate. You know, like, that's what you could imagine someone doing. It's very realistic, you know, it's happened before, stuff like, you know, and it just...
Right, yeah,
the galaxy fragmenting, you know, intergalactic communication faltering, you know, it breaks up into a bunch of warlord, you know, controlled kingdoms, you know, ex-imperial governors or criminal enterprises or whatnot. You know, it makes a lot of sense. So, but it's gonna be interesting to see what, because I'm sure at some point they'll be, you know, they'll be slowly releasing. You know, we've already got several books planned. We got the Aftermath, Bloodlines. So, yeah, we'll be getting it. It's just not near as fast as I'd hope it would be.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I hope that the stories are good. I hope that they, you know, I've been pleasantly surprised by some of them. And like you said a little while ago, there's some stories and whatnot that I could do without, you know, or I wish had been different. But that's sort of the case with a lot of things.
Yep. Well, what a note to end it on. All right. Well, thanks, Jeff, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I love talking Star Wars, man.
Yep. All right. And if anybody wanted to find you on social media or follow your site, where could they do that?
My site is called The Imperial Talker. It is just a blog where I talk all things Star Wars, basically whatever comes into my mind that week to write about. And you can find me at Imperial Talker on Twitter and The Imperial Talker on Facebook. And if anybody cares, in June, I'm going to do a shameless plug now. In June, I will be doing, the first full week in June, I will be doing a week on the Hutts, aptly named Hutt Week. So there's ways for people to get involved in that if they want to. So.
Yeah, we are all about shameless plugs here. That is... yeah.
All right. That's what I like to hear.
All right. And as always, if you want to send us an email, you can do that at fasterandmoreintense@gmail.com. You can check us out on Facebook at Facebook/fasterandmoreintense. We're on Twitter at FMI Podcasting. We are also on YouTube at Faster and More Intense Podcasting and on iTunes at, you guessed it, Faster and More Intense Podcasting.
Star Wars is the exclusive trademark of Lucasfilm Limited. All Star Wars names and sounds are the exclusive copyright of Lucasfilm or parent company. All content generated on this site is the exclusive intellectual property of Faster and More Intense.